Nikon did a great job convincing a lot of people to buy the ZR based on its marketing of the Red NE codec. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a hitch in that this codec was just way too chunky to use on a regular professional basis. But the Nikon ZR has one secret weapon. I mean, it's not that secret, it's hiding in plain sight within the camera, but considering most people bought this camera for the Red NE, it's not surprising that this other codec flew under the radar. Once I started shooting in it, I quickly realized that this was probably the best codec to be using on the Nikon ZR right now. That codec is NRAW, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So if you have a Nikon ZR or are thinking of buying one, don't skip this video because I think there's going to be some surprising stuff in here for you. So what makes the NRAW in this camera so special is that it comes in two flavors. It comes in a compressed flavor. It comes in normal and high quality. And that normal mode is what I'm really interested in because that is going to give you almost double the recording rate of what you can get in the 6K Red RAW. So that matters because it means you only need 1 or 2 1TB cards on an average shoot day. Whereas if you're using the Red codec, you're going to need maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5. And have you seen the cost of storage recently? And also even more once you factor in hard drives and SSDs and backup. The normal NRAW is much more manageable when it comes to data rates, and it's much more comparable to what I'm used to on cameras like my Pixel 6K and Red Komodo, and in regular production work, it's just not going to give you the same headaches that something like Red NE will. We all know now that the N-Log H.265 is a little bit ropey, there's some issues with it that need addressing, it doesn't have the best image quality, and then the other RAW codecs like ProRes RAW just again have unmanageable data rates. The first time I took the NRAW out and got the footage back, I just thought it looked stunning. It was beautiful. I was really surprised and I quickly realized my mistake in overlooking it. It gives you beautiful image quality, you know, it still has an organic quality to it. I think, you know, overall, I would still probably prefer the Red NE color science and the Red color science. The NRAW is maybe a little bit more neutral, which some people might prefer. I also find that the Red NE does tend to have quite a heavy warm and green tint in it, which I think sometimes can muddy up skin tone gradations, especially at lower exposures or underexposure. Obviously, once you go through the grading process, any differences between the Red NE and the NRAW, N-Log, you know, they begin to disappear and become less important. In terms of comparing these two codecs together, I would say that the Red codec has a smidgen more highlight retention. You'll get a little bit more in the highlights in the Red codec. But I think generally it's not a night and day difference, and on most projects it's not going to make a huge difference. And I think it's probably actually the NRAW that saves this camera. Like, I think it's the NRAW that makes it the beast that it actually is. You know, if you take the Red codec out of the equation for a minute, pop it up on a shelf, just ignore it. And just consider what you're getting with this camera. So for around $2,000, you get a really great, flexible, versatile, compressed RAW codec in the Nikon NRAW. And you get that across all shooting frame rates and resolution. So it's not like a Lumix camera where you get ProRes RAW, but you have to crop in on the sensor, or you only get up to 30 frames a second. On this camera, you get up to 60 frames a second, full sensor, 6K full frame, and then you get up to a crazy 120 frames a second if you go into a Super 35 crop, and the quality of that still looks really good in my opinion. And by the way, if you're not already, I would just really love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel. It's just like one of the simplest things you can do to support this channel. So if you can, please just consider clicking that subscribe button down below. So when it comes to color grading NRAW footage in Resolve, this is what you'll be confronted with in the RAW tab. It's slightly different to what you get with Red RAW. So if we look in here, you get a slightly more streamlined selection of settings, just color temp, tint, and exposure adjustment, plus your ISO selector. Whereas with NRAW, you get this much more expanded column here, giving you much more control over stuff like shadows and highlights and exposure, as well as saturation, and also sharpness and detail adjustments as well, which you don't get with the Red RAW codec. Unlike other RAW codecs, interestingly, you don't get an ISO selector with NRAW, which I find a little bit frustrating because my mind just sort of thinks in ISO in terms of where I originally exposed and shot the camera and then where I might want to take it in post. It's not always clear, you know, what ISO you're going to. with this exposure slider relative to what you captured at. But obviously it does the same thing as changing ISO with other RAW codecs. And also down here, you'll see we've got a few other options with lens settings. So most camera branded lenses tend to hide their lenses like flaws and imperfections through lens corrections, which are sort of baked into your footage. And this is the same on the Nikon NRAW as well. So it passes those corrections on into NRAW. So if you've got like distortion in the lens or vignetting and stuff, it will automatically correct that for you. And of course you can control those corrections and turn them off if you want. Whereas under the red RAW tab, you don't get that. So if you shot the same composition twice with a Nikon lens, once in NRAW and once in red RAW, you would notice slight differences in the way that those shots look, because you might see stuff like distortion, vignetting turning up in the red RAW, whereas that will be corrected in the NRAW. As I mentioned in my long-term review, a lot of people thought that you could magically transform your NRAW footage into Red NE simply by changing the file extension, and that's not true. That can't happen. It's essentially the same as basically pushing your NRAW file through like a color space transform in Resolve. So you're just sort of brute forcing the N-log footage into the red color space. That's pretty much all you're doing. You know, some people might want those red RAW controls, so by all means do that. But just be aware that as soon as you do that, you do lose stuff like lens correction. So you'll notice that you'll see vignetting or even certain distortion in your shots that weren't there previously. When it comes to color grading my NRAW footage, I actually just released my Hackney LUT and Power Grade packs for Nikon N-Log and Red color spaces. It's a 2-in-1 pack, so you get LUTs or Power Grades for both Nikon and Red color spaces, and I have a standalone LUT pack and also a Power Grade which also comes with the LUT pack. But basically this is the structure that I use to grade my footage and has been used to grade everything in this video. And you can see it here. It's designed to really give you like loads of versatility and flexibility. So it's not just like one look that you're sort of forced into using. The intention here is to give you the tools and a modular power grade to sort of build and customize your own looks to your own taste. For example, here, you know, we've got like exposure tweaks, and then I've got my film tone nodes here. And these are basically 3 different creative looks that you can use on your footage to help push different looks. And you can dial the intensity in to taste. So I tend to roll them right back and just have them coming in quite subtly. But we've got stuff like color density here. We've got a softening node as well. And what I will normally do is go in and make my initial adjustments in the RAW tab. So we're talking usually color temperature, exposure, and maybe I'll, you know, sometimes dial down the sharpness as well. And then using the power grade, I'll build my look. I've designed the LUT pack to also have similar flexibility. So it has what I call my stackable LUTs, which allow you to combine multiple LUTs on the base Hackney LUT to build and customize your own looks. And it's currently been launched with a heavy discount, so if you are interested in picking up, that will be available for the next few weeks before it goes up to full pricing. And of course, both the Nikon and Red LUTs and power grades will work on other Nikon and Red cameras, so I also use the power grade and LUTs on my Red Komodo. You know, if Nikon hadn't acquired Red, then no doubt we would have got a slightly different camera. It would have been simpler. You know, we wouldn't have had this inclusion of the Red codec, and Nikon would have just placed more focus on promoting the NRAW features. And then we probably wouldn't have had this big mismatch between, you know, people getting really excited with the Red codec and then finding out that it's not really that usable, and maybe even having to sort of return or sell the camera. But I actually think the NRAW is ironically the saving grace of this camera. Like, it's a great alternative. It looks great, you know, it has decent file sizes, and it just allows you to take full advantage of all of the recording frame rates and resolutions that this camera has to offer. And it also gives you stuff like, you know, the lens corrections and, you know, a really decent RAW control tab in Resolve as well. And I think when you look at the NRAW, this is the codec that gives you the full Nikon ZR experience. It gives you a compressed Red RAW codec. It allows you to have this all-in-one production camera that doesn't necessarily have to be rigged out. You've got the great screen, you've got the 32-bit float internal audio, and I think all of this combined is what makes this the beast of a camera that it is. The Red perhaps is just a bit of a distraction at the moment, and until Nikon address this, maybe by providing a compressed Red codec, I think NRAW is the codec that most people should look at using until maybe some of these issues are addressed. There is a faint glimmer of hope in that we have this compressed NRAW codec, right? So it must be possible within the existing hardware of the camera to provide a compressed variant of the red codec as well. If you have a ZR or you think you're getting one, definitely give the NRAW a look. Like, if you haven't, don't overlook it. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my Hackney LUT and Paragrade, which is still discounted. I'll keep that on discount for a few more weeks. It's a launch discount, so get it whilst it's there. I'm Ed. Obviously, don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you can. I would appreciate that. But until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.